From the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana, welcome to yet another fantastic episode of the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Over Rev Show, presented to you by our good friends and partners over at KraussMeats.com. Always top quality since 1923 and very close to my heart, as well as our good friends and partners over at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers, makers of those high-end breathable men's underwear. They are respectfully scandalous yet unapologetic. As always, I am your host, Kevin Krauss, and I have been worked up over the last week since we now have open wheel racing on a grand scale. We're 2 weeks into the IndyCar season and a week and change into the Formula One season, and we're going to kind of cover both of those. And you're going to get some hot takes this week from me, as well as a rare but worth listening to rant, because I am going to go off later in the show. But first, we're going to start off with the IndyCar season because 2 weeks ago they started off in the streets of St. Petersburg, which was actually a pretty solid race. We're not going to talk, by the way, a whole lot about the absolute results, a few standout performers, a couple of trends that I'm noticing because it's so early in the season for both IndyCar and for Formula One that it's really kind of a moot point to talk about race results, but trends are a little bit more important in what I'm seeing. So when it came to St. Pete, do we see a little bit of a resurgence in Team Penske? As you look at the picture on your screen there, you see the Thirsty Three of Scott McLaughlin qualified on pole. Looked like a nice resurgence there early on from Team Penske, even though as the race went on, they wound up not being able to close the deal, and the win kind of picked up where we left off last year with Alex Palou, the championship winner from last year, clinching that race with a huge gap. However, there's a few other storylines there to kind of make sure that we take into account here as we then roll into the Phoenix race afterwards. So obviously, as I mentioned, Alex Palou kind of continued his streak, and everybody was saying, "Oh my God, is the season over? Is anybody else going to contend?" Because Palou seems to just be unstoppable. But some of the other big storylines through there, and one of which I touched on already, which was Team Penske. Last year, they had kind of fallen apart after the whole debacle at Indianapolis when they got disqualified, and Cindric and Rzuski and Kyle Moyer all got shit canned. So their season kind of went off the rails. But the offseason seems like they've really regrouped because they got David Malukas in the fold. They brought him over from the Foyt team. He was running strongly. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. But I think that's it was a pretty good result overall in terms of is Penske a force to be reckoned with again? A couple of other things that we noticed or that I noticed through the course of the St. Pete weekend was a couple of things from the Andretti team. Number one being Will Power. He's the new man, right? We just talked about Penske. He was the one with, the chair that got yanked out from underneath him there at Penske, and he signed with Andretti. But in typical Penske fashion, Will Power's contract said that he couldn't sign with another team until after January 1st. So that the teams are already working on stuff, right? So he got a little bit of a late start, struggled all weekend in that Andretti car at St. Pete, had braking issues, couldn't quite get it sorted out. He was not comfortable. There were problems with that, which to an extent kind of continued on to Phoenix this past weekend. But one of the other sort of understated things there was a very strong run from Marcus Ericsson, also in the Andretti camp. I thought very clearly, especially when I attended the IndyCar content days back in February here in Indianapolis, that Marcus made a big point of his mental toughness, trying to get a little bit better. Because when things started to go a little bit sideways for him last year, and I don't mean that in the literal sense, he admitted he couldn't really quite recover, and he had a pretty strong weekend at St. Pete. So I'm looking to see him continue that throughout the season. But the biggest surprise for me that first weekend was we had a rookie and the team in general that he drives for had a really strong race. We got a rookie, Dennis Hauger, who came up from the Indy Next Series. He was last year's Indy Next champion, qualified third on debut. And his teammate, Roman Grosjean, who was out of IndyCar last year, qualified fourth for Dale Coyne Racing. Dale Coyne has been kind of the epitome of, the smallest team, the little team that tried to. But a couple things working in DCR's favor right now is they've got a partnership with Andretti since and Dennis Hauger is an Andretti driver, so they're getting some technical support from Andretti. But they've also got Michael Cannon and Bill Pappas back as engineers and chief mechanics, and I think that's a huge, huge deal. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, a continued surprisingly strong run throughout the season from DCR. So good for those guys. I'm looking forward to seeing more from both the team as well as the drivers and Dennis Hauger, as they call him, the Norwegian Nightmare. So I think that's kind of a cool little nickname there. Also, Rinus VeeKay moving from DCR to Juncos Hollinger had a pretty strong weekend throughout. That was nice to see. Unfortunately, there were a couple of other sort of bad, I shouldn't say bad, just unfortunate circumstances. We saw a rare crash from Scott Dixon in practice throughout the weekend. Then we saw a lap one crash that took out another rookie, Mick Schumacher, driving for Rahal Letterman Lanigan. 4 turns into the race, didn't even complete his first lap in an IndyCar race. So that was disappointing to see. I know he expected a lot more, but I think, in my opinion, probably the biggest issue that I saw, well, I shouldn't say the biggest, because they all have their place, right? Is with McLaren. Certainly, you've got Pato Award, you've got Christian Lundgaard, strong drivers, but McLaren has a Nolan Siegel problem, and it went on throughout the season last year. He struggled a good bit of the time last year. He struggled at St. Pete, and as we'll see here, he struggled again at Phoenix. I got to believe that Nolan Siegel is on a very short leash, and I'll come back to that here as we get into Phoenix, which was last weekend. Now, the Phoenix race, as we saw a great field there, and it was great to see them back at Phoenix. I used to go to that track quite often when I lived out that way. It was a doubleheader weekend with NASCAR, which I think was great. It kind of brought a new fan base to it. It's a reconfigured Phoenix, if you will. The front straightaway is now the back straightaway, and vice versa. So again, kind of a nod to the strength of the Penske team, kind of getting their poop in a group, as they say. Right? We had as you see in the bottom corner there in the picture, we had David Malukas qualified on pole, his first ever IndyCar pole. And then we found that we had at the end, and I'll just you guys already probably know the results, but you had Joseph Newgarden, the oval meister, the short oval meister, winning the race. Scott McLaughlin, never really a solid, player in there, but it wasn't terrible, it wasn't great, but all in all, it was a strong weekend for Penske. But probably the most surprising thing is, as you see right here, was the performance from Christian Rasmussen from Ed Carpenter Racing. He and Alexander Rossi, his teammate, were actually really good. And Rasmussen, man, that guy is quite possibly the most exciting IndyCar driver out there right now. He is so aggressive. We saw it last year. He got his first win at Milwaukee. That dude is literally a crash waiting to happen. I mean, he caught Will Power by surprise on a move on the outside of turn 2. I guess you would call it now, with that new configuration, and sort of clipped him, kind of pinched him into the wall, may have changed the toe a little bit, but he was so aggressive, making passes on the high line. Absolutely the class of the field. But then he had a second bit of contact that actually kind of damned him at the finish. And while he was literally the best car on track, after those couple bits of contact that didn't put him out of the race, it damaged the car enough that he was hanging on. I think he came back to finish 14th after just storming the field. And if you saw the race last weekend, Seventh Gear Over F fans, just how disappointed he was, because he knows what a good car he had. So hopefully he can bounce back from that. But the other kind of surprise from the Phoenix weekend was the performance of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. Those guys have been a shit show the last several years, particularly on ovals, but yet they qualified third and fourth with Graham and Mick Schumacher. His, first laps in competition on an IndyCar Series race was on an oval, which is no small feat. And he said afterwards he was surprised at just how hectic it was, because everything happens really, really fast, because that's just a 1 mile oval there in Phoenix. So really, really good to see those guys running well. They've gone through so many personnel changes over the last few seasons. Jay Fry's over there now. I know Brian Barnhart's over there now. I hope for their sake that they have their act together and they can, continue to show strong. And I know Louis Foster, last year's Rookie of the Year in the IndyCar Series didn't run all that well, but he's typically pretty strong. So that may have just been an off weekend for them. So kudos to RLL for a solid qualifying. Hopefully that bodes well for the future. We talked about Alex Palou. I thought the racing overall was great. The other impressive thing, and I mentioned in the St. Petersburg segment, was Dennis Hauger. Now, Dennis Hauger he didn't qualify as well. He didn't make quite the big splash that he did in St. Pete, but at one point in the race, and I forget exactly how far through the race they were, he actually spun coming off of turn 2, managed to not hit the wall, continued on the straightaway backwards, got the car turned around and kept going. And they're doing, a buck 85, a buck probably coming off the corner. They're probably more like, buck 70, and didn't hit anything, kept it going straight backwards, kind of opposite traffic, turned it around and kept going. So unbelievable. I don't know that I've seen something like that maybe ever in an IndyCar race and have a driver get away with it. So the Norwegian Nightmare has a bright future. That dude has car control in spades. Not quite sure that it matches Christian Rasmussen yet, but Christian Rasmussen is fast becoming my favorite to watch, particularly on an oval. The racing I thought was excellent. They had some record number of passes. It's in the hundreds. I forget exactly what it was, but I did hear in the aftermath of the Phoenix race, a number of folks kind of complaining about the Fox coverage of the race. And I'm like, I watched the race because obviously I wasn't there, but I didn't really think that the Fox coverage was terrible. I thought they did a good job with the cutaways. I could have done with a little less of, the Clint Boyers and the NASCAR commentation kind of mixed into that. I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more, coverage of the battles throughout the field, but that's kind of nitpicky. I think they're really doing a good job promoting the series. All of the commercials that they've cut, like with Will Power and Palou and those guys, I think is really good. So honestly, I think that the Phoenix race was great. I hope that they perhaps even do more of those double dips when they partner up with NASCAR, because it brings just another group of eyes to the series that they didn't have before. I know Pato complained early on that he's sick of being second fiddle to NASCAR, but then after he saw the crowds and so forth, he's like, well, maybe I need to rethink that. So I think we could do with a few more doubleheaders like that, where we've got NASCAR and IndyCar on the same track, same weekend. So good kudos to the series, Penske Entertainment making that all work, as well as Penske coming back. It looks like they're going to be a force to be reckoned with here as the season goes on. So all that said, we've got a couple more races here before we get into the month of May. We've got the Long Beach Grand Prix coming. We've got Barber Motorsports Park down in Birmingham, Alabama coming up here shortly. But this weekend is the next race. So it's 3 weekends in a row to open the season, which is pretty incredible for the IndyCar series. So you are getting dialed in and you're going to start seeing more and more of these storylines. So we started off in St. Pete 2 weeks ago. We did Phoenix this last weekend, and now this weekend coming up is a brand new race. It's a street course, a temporary street course in Arlington, Texas, basically right around Dallas Cowboy Stadium, or right around Jerry's World, and everybody's fired up about it. It's a new track. We'll see who kind of has their road course set up kind of dialed in the quickest. I know the Andretti team has been pretty good with their road course, especially their temporary road course setups over the last several years. So we'll see if Will Power can kind of resolve some of those issues that he had at Phoenix and the braking issues he had at St. Pete to get a little bit more comfortable, because once Will's on it, man, he made a number of passes, kind of like they said, rodeo girls go around the outside kind of deal. That's how he ran it in Phoenix until he cut that tire. So there he is. There's that Dennis Hauger right there. So that's what we got going into Arlington. So like I said at the top of the show, everybody, not really focus too much on the outright results. Obviously, we want to give the winners their due, but kind of shout out and a quick little bit of analysis to some of the other players and storylines from the last 2 weekends. But what I'd like to know from you, Seventh Gear Overrev fans, at this early stage, when we thought that Palou was going to be shot out of a cannon and just run away with the championship, and then he crashed out early in Phoenix thanks to Rinus VeeKay kind of squeezing him. there. So he wound up with a DNF, a rare DNF. I don't think he had any DNFs last year. So he went from the championship leader to, I think, fifth in the points. And now I think Joseph Newgarden is the new points leader after Phoenix. So tell me, seventh gear over F fans, who at this point is your early season favorite to win the championship? So drop your comments below. Yeah, drop your comments below as to who you think the your early season favorite for the championship, not the 500, but for the overall championship in the Astra Cup. All right, now with that said, we're going to move into the season opening weekend for the Formula One series, which was in Australia. And you may see a side of me I'm going to tell you right now that I'm not very proud of. But before we do that, let's just take a moment to recognize our great friends and partners over at Krauss Meats, purveyors of the finest small batch handcrafted artisan sausages you'll find anywhere. They are about to expand on their beef jerky lineup, so make sure that you check out kraussmeats.com for all of the updates on that and order yours today. As well, we've got our good friends and partners over at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers with those fantastic breathable, high quality, high end men's breathable underwear with ball bustier technology. They are phenomenal. And they are, as I said earlier, they are unapologetic, respectfully scandalous, yet unapologetic. And if you go to their website, which is respectyourpackage.com, and you enter the discount code RESPECT7, they will give you 20% off of your order. So promo code for Respect Your Package is RESPECT7 for 20% off of your entire order. As well, if you like what we've been hearing coming from the Seventh Gear Over F show, and I know we've been talking about some cool projects we've got coming up for the month of May, please make sure that you're liking the show, sharing it with your friends, hitting that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. We are now nearly 100 subscribers. We are heard in 118 different countries. Thanks to you, our great listeners and viewers. Looking to continue to expand and grow that. We've got some great things coming up, which I'll tell you more about a little bit later on. But with all that said, we appreciate you guys watching us, checking us out, following us on all the social media channels on Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to giving you that much more great content throughout the season. Now, with that said, F1. I'm going to try to be restrained here because I don't know how many of you watched the F1 race and stayed up late to watch all this. But honestly, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with these new F1 regulations? As a former driver, and I'm going to start at the top here because I've been on a rant with JD, my producer, and other friends of mine about this for a week. These cars are absolutely ridiculous right now. With the new regulations, the cars are different this year. They're heavier, a little shorter wheelbase. There's a greater emphasis on the hybrid split, like nearly a 50-50 split. So it has changed the way these cars are driven. It is no longer an F1 race. We see drivers having to downshift on the straightaways and brake going into the corners and then accelerate into the corner because it's become a battery management deal. And so the guys don't even know really, they haven't figured out how to drive them because it's so antithetical to what they've been taught from go-karting all the way to where they're at now. And the thing of it is that the drivers knew this early on, even before, I mean, they knew it in preseason testing. Max Verstappen called it a couple of years ago when these regulations were being discussed. And say what you want about Max Verstappen, like him or hate him, but he was actually right. In preseason testing, he said the cars aren't even fun to drive because they're heavier. This whole engine dynamic with the near 50-50 power split between the NGUK, the regenerative systems, all of this crap has made these cars nearly, I don't want to say undrivable because obviously they're being driven. These guys are getting paid a big boatload of cash to drive these cars. But Max Verstappen even said it. He's like, this could, kind of throw a new sort of arms race at it to whoever's got the most powerful engine can therefore have, more regen potentially. But it was absolutely ridiculous to watch them race this way. Did you see anybody braking as late as they could going into the corner to outbrake somebody? No. You saw this contrived bullshit of a product that the FIA and Liberty Media, thank you, Greg Maffei, and Mohammed Ben Salim try to sell us like it was the emperor's new clothes. Like, here's this turd that we've rolled in glitter, and we expect you to like it and keep coming back for more. It was absolutely ridiculous. And at the start of the race, you sit there and you wait. Is they're all on the grid? What did it sound like to you? To me, it sounded like a field of Dyson vacuum cleaners. It did not sound like a field of 22 Formula One cars. And then we had all kinds of problems. Obviously, Ford's got their problems with Aston Martin. We saw Carlos Sainz have an issue in practice. We saw Valtteri Bottas have an issue on the warm-up lap. On the parade lap, we saw Oscar Piastri, hometown boy, crash on the warm-up lap. Why? Oh, nobody talked about it during the broadcast, did they? Come to find out afterwards, it was because there was a problem with the power output with these new regulations. He got some upwards of like another 100 extra horsepower that came out of nowhere and caused him to spin and crash the car. Seriously? We're supposed to be okay with that? Absolutely contrived. And the teams were aware of this from back all the way back from testing. In fact, everybody knows about this to the point where there's discussion amongst all the team principals that the team principals wanted changes then, but the F1 and FIA and everybody, Mohammed bin Salim, all these guys convinced them to wait. Just give it a couple races, right? Maybe we'll make some changes after China, which is this weekend's race. Well, I got news for you. If this weekend's race in China is the same as it was last week at Australia, good luck, Liberty Media, keeping your audience, because the vast majority of people that I know that I've talked to don't want to watch this. This is ridiculous. It's bullshit. It's effed up. It needs to change. Now, of course, thank you, JD, for your timely catch on that. F1, as we know it, as it stands on right now, today, is not F1, right? Engines have a much different note. It's all about battery management. The racing is boring. As I said, it's very contrived. And in the aftermath of Australia, a number of fans responded to the F1's Twitter account, right? I didn't even read it. I kind of found out after the fact. But a lot of people were complaining in response to the F1's tweet about what a great race it was and everything. And everybody, the vast majority of them were complaining that this was ridiculous, that these cars are ridiculous. The racing was bullshit, which I personally agree with. It was complete bullshit. But F1, whoever's managing their Twitter account, actually went so far as to start hiding those negative responses. Can you believe that? They're hiding some of those negative responses because they don't want it they don't want to look bad, right? And they didn't hide them all. They hid a good bit of them. Now, kudos to George Russell as well as Kimi Antonelli for finishing 1-2. But even there, now in the aftermath of Australia, there's suspicion and rumors abounding that, they perhaps were slightly illegal. Maybe they had a little different torque deal, whatever it happens to be. Perhaps, they won unfairly. I don't know. We'll find out. We're going to see what happens in China this weekend, but the reliability sucks on these cars. The warm-up crash we talked about. But then, and we also, by the way, who of you that watch Formula One, which I'm sure most of you do, that are Seventh Gear Overhead fans, how many of you found the Apple TV broadcast? Because now you can't get it on ESPN. It's on Apple TV. How many of you enjoy the Apple TV broadcast crew? That's exactly what I thought. None of you, because I thought it sucked big time. I was going to say suck ass. Well, I guess I could say suck ass anyway. But, I mean, come on. Who did we have? We didn't have Martin Brundle. We didn't have Karun Chandhok. We didn't have Crofty. We didn't have, Ted Kravitz, or Bernie Collins. We had, honestly, with the exception of Jolyon Palmer, literally nobody else I take that back. They had Juan Pablo Montoya, but they had their driver, their race engineer, who I guess used to work for Ferrari. No idea who she is. No idea who the female host was. They had Jolyon Palmer. Okay, whatever. They had Alex Brundle running the teleprompter, not the teleprompter, the playback screen, and it was like, whatever. They had some dude that looked like he was just there for the party at the end of pit lane on the way out. They had some dude that looks like the Indian version of Johnny Bravo from the Cartoon Network. And then what? It was so painful to watch. Thankfully, my old co-host, John McGrath, turned me on to the fact that on the Apple TV broadcast, you can actually scroll down and find a link to the Sky Sports broadcast where you get the A team back. You get the Ted Kravitz and all and Crofty and all those guys back. But and then they got Juan Pablo Montoya, who was there because his son Sebastian was racing in the F2 series. Okay, that's all well and good. And yeah, he was probably the most entertaining of that group of commentators, but that was a pretty low bar because I was even saying to a couple of my buddies, they would go to Juan Montoya and he's wearing a pair of warm up pants like he's getting ready to play a pickup game of basketball in a park with a kind of a baggy t-shirt, looking like he's basically the go-karting dad that is just ready to load the cart up and go have a beer. It's like, really? This is your commentary crew? If I was faced with just having that and didn't know that I could get the Sky Sports broadcast, I would have turned it off. And I tell you, and I'm gonna take a bit of a breath here. Feel free to walk me off the ledge in the comments because I'm pretty fired up about this because this is not racing. This is not what any racer worth his salt wants to do is manage batteries. And to that point, coming out of that weekend, since it was same weekend as the IndyCar race in Phoenix, Chip Ganassi Racing, last year's championship-winning IndyCar team, tweeted out, and I'll have JD pull that up right now, super clipping. Okay, right there. And John Oriovitz, a longtime IndyCar beat reporter and author. I'm sorry, F1 fans. What the fuck is super clipping? I feel like we're talking about a new haircut chain, like the sport clips or super clipping. I don't honestly even really understand what super clipping is right at the moment. And then battery management. JD, can you pull that clip up one more time for me, please? Battery management, downshifting on the straights. Here's the money shot. Yeah, we don't do that here. We race. Now, for the F1 purists of you that are watching this, I know you're going to say, well, IndyCar is a hybrid system too. Yes, you're right. It is, but it is absolutely nowhere near the farce and the bag of crap product that F1 is trying to trot out here in front of millions of people worldwide. Now, when I said I'm going to take a breath, yeah, sure I was. So let's just say this: I will give them the grace that I can. That as the season goes on, and the teams and the drivers kind of wrap their heads around this technology and how to manage it better, the racing will get better. But okay, so the racing's going to get better, but yet the product is still the same, right? So these guys are going to have to do everything differently than they've trained their entire lives to do to make this product that has been influenced by major manufacturers and their marketing team and Liberty Media and shoved it down the team's throats. And conversely, they've also shoved it down all of us fans' throats. So I would absolutely expect that this weekend's race in China is going to be pretty much a carbon copy, maybe with a little bit better reliability than it was in Australia. And here's another point with this: if they knew this all the way back in preseason testing, why have they not either delayed the launch of that or stretched it out? Or my bottom line point with that is that this should have been figured out long before Australia. Yes, the team spoke out about it, in Bahrain when they were doing the preseason testing and in Spain. You would think that these rules have been on the books for more than a year now. These teams have already been prepping for this. And you would think that they would have this largely sorted out by now. But I don't care if the teams figure it out. I don't care if the drivers figure out how to drive around these issues. This is not racing. This is not Formula One. Formula One, as it stands right now, is dead. Right? Oh, there you go. What is super clipping? Who effing cares? I don't want to talk about super clipping. I want to talk about racing. I want to hear the shriek of, V10s or at least V6s that are better like last year. I want to have a lighter car. I want to have like legitimate passing, not one where because I didn't have enough battery power and battery management that I let you go by. I don't want this contrived passing crap. I want to watch real racing. And right now, Formula One is not real racing. So suck on that, FIA. All right. There's my rant. With that said, Seventh Gear Over fans, what do you think? Am I out of my mind here thinking what I think about the current state of F1? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think of the new regulations and how it's affected the racing in Formula One? I would really like to hear your comments. And if you've got a compelling answer or rebuttal, I would love to hear it, and we can talk about it on the next show. But right now, I am more than a little pissed off with what F1 looks like. And like I said, Max called it. And as much as you may love him or hate him, he was right. And the other part of this, speaking of that, see, it, I can't stop, right? And what I told you it was going to go on a rant early on, right after, like, I think it was the last preseason test. Even some of the other drivers are like, well, it's not that bad. They're different. Well, that's just the FIA leaning on these guys to, again, roll this turd in glitter. But yet now, after the Australia weekend, now they're all coming out and saying, yeah, these cars aren't all that much fun to drive. They're slower. It's antithetical. Maybe they didn't say that. Maybe that was me. But now they're actually saying it. So that just means that this is, and I said it seasons ago, that F1 is like the world's greatest, biggest mafia, with the team bosses, like how they squeezed out Andretti, how they force things on. Like they talked last year about, passing you can get fined for, inappropriate language over the team radios, or in interviews. And now this. So it's like you got to toe the line there. If you want to continue to have your plum seat and your plum salary, you better not speak out against anything to do with F1, or we're going to get you. So that's unacceptable to me. And honestly, you don't, because not only do you not get that in IndyCar racing, the racing in IndyCar is much, much better. And don't tell me that the talent level is different, because it's not. Romain Grosjean raced in Formula One, came to IndyCar. The depth of talent in IndyCar and the competition it's deeper and it's closer than in Formula One. And right now it looks like Formula One is just pissing down their leg. So I hope, for the sake of every F1 fan everywhere and all the drivers and the series and their Liberty Media counterparts that are trying to improve their stock price, that they get this figured out. Because if they don't, they're going to lose viewers left and right, which is great, because IndyCar series will welcome them with open arms. All right. I think I'm done. Had to get that off my chest before it got any further, because otherwise I think I was going to probably have a heart attack. I was apoplectic. That's your word of the day, seventh year over fans, apoplectic. All right. That said, we got another great show coming up with you next week. We've got open wheel drivers that are racing overseas. We've got a VP of communications with AJ Foyt Racing coming on here shortly. We got a whole lot of more, as they used to say. So again, if you like what you're hearing from the Seventh Gear Over Rev show, thank you so much. Make sure you continue to share that. You go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on basically anywhere you get your podcast. You will find the Seventh Gear Over Rev show. It is the greatest spectacle in podcasting. And once again, great lineup of guests coming up here in the weeks and months ahead. So let us know what you think. Stay tuned for the IndyCar race from Arlington this weekend, as well as Formula One in China. Not to mention staying tuned to us, the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Over Rev show. We'll see you next week.